very good evening. Mangkhut will go down in Hong Kong's history as one of the most powerful typhoons we've seen. Even though it's moving away from us, locals are left to deal with widespread damage caused when the hurricane signal number 10 remained in force for 10 hours yesterday. Here's a side of Hong Kong most people did not expect to see: an established housing estate left in ruins. During the storm, close to 400 people sought emergency medical services and 2 remain in critical conditions. Fallen trees remain on hundreds of roads, and the Education Bureau has announced that classes at all schools will continue to be suspended tomorrow. Locals also had a hard time getting to work this morning when public buses stopped running and MTR train services were disrupted. Now here's Sharon Tang with more on the mad scramble at different stations.
Everybody back to work. But for those who had to take the MTR's East Rail line, it was a nightmare. During the morning rush hour, the Tai Wai interchange station was packed with people waiting to get on the train. That's because trains in both directions of the line were using the same track. And that meant passengers heading to Tai Po and those heading towards Hung Hom had to share the same platform to board the train. Given how many people were trying to get to work this morning, the result was crowds, confusion and chaos. Many were unhappy with the arrangements. This woman said, 1 second it was platform 1, then we're told to wait on platform 2, now I'm back and stuffed in platform 1. There were also those who couldn't stand the heat and crowds. A similar arrangement was made at Kowloon Tong Station, where the crowds were just as overwhelming. These unfortunate events happened in stations along the East Rail Line, which carries some 86,000 people per hour both directions every morning.
More than 50 locations along the East Rail Line that were suffered from all the falling tree damages and also affecting our fare line. And we have been able to, recover most of the locations, and with some remains.
He added that frontline workers have been working around the clock so that affected train services can resume within a few hours. And let's not forget cross-border commuters too. Those in line included this tourist who missed a train to Guilin and had to reschedule his journey.
Yes, we want to get to the border, China border. It's been a schmozzle, but we're quite happy. That's just what it is,
Train services between Tai Po Market and Sheung Shui were suspended until 3 p.m. today. More than 1,000 passengers were jam-packed in Tai Po during the morning peak hours. The MTRC initially arranged free shuttle bus services early in the morning, but cancelled it due to poor roadside conditions. It was only in the afternoon that services resumed to assist those travelling between Fanling and Sheung Shui. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Well, as we mentioned, Mangkhut left a trail of destruction in Hong Kong, including some 1,500 uprooted trees. Bus services have not fully resumed because of numerous obstacles left on the city's roads. The government aims to clear the trunk roads of these obstacles by 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. Kaina Chu reports.
This harbourfront building in Hung Hom was so battered that many of its buildings were blown out. Inside the building, electronic devices, paper documents, even this door frame, none of them made it through the storm intact. A second-floor tenant told us she was greeted by a terrifying scene of water puddles and glass shards this morning. She said while the management office of the building agreed to deal with the situation today, it is unknown how long it will take or if there will be any compensation arrangements. A primary school opposite the building wasn't spared from Mangkhut's wrath either. Similarly, in Quarry Bay, flimsy scaffolding on this building under construction has led to the closure of a section of King's Road, which will only reopen earliest at 3 a.m. tomorrow. So far, the government has received around 1,500 reports of uprooted trees. The collapses are said to have hampered traffic by blocking roughly 600 roads. Outside Ratunji Hospital in Wan Chai, a fallen tree was sawed into sections before being taken away by workers of the Tree Management Office. Chai Wan Road was no exception, with only one lane left open to traffic. On Taixing Road, a tree crushed a school van after falling onto it. Many drivers, oblivious of the blockage, had to be turned away only upon arriving. With an aim to clean up most major roads by 5 a.m. tomorrow, the Transport Department said it would deploy roughly 650 workers to do the job. Kana Chu, TVB News.
The chief executive was today asked why she did not push employers to let their staff off today. She said it would be more fitting for everyone to be more accommodating in Hong Kong these days. Given the road conditions, was it really necessary for people to head to work today? The chief executive offered her view, but not before thanking roughly 10,000 frontline government staff for their efforts during the storm. Carrie Lam said last night she appealed to local employers to show understanding and flexibility if their staff can't head back in time in this traffic. Bosses shouldn't deduct people's wages or cut the bonus because of this. But why didn't the government push employers to simply let their staff take today off? Carrie Lam only said it would be more fitting these days if people are more understanding and accommodating. She also gave the example that civil servants have been told to just alert their supervisors if they can't make it back to the office today. Yet some civil servants only received note of that in an email sent this afternoon when they would have returned to their desks. Civil servants need to face the public, particularly frontline staff who need to answer inquiries. So, without clear guidelines on when staff should return, supervisors may be scared to make the call themselves, especially if things go wrong, said Leung Chau-ting of the Hong Kong Federation of Civil Service Unions. In fact, he thinks the government, as the largest employer here, should have led by example and give everyone half a day off today.
Meanwhile, class suspensions will continue tomorrow. This afternoon, the Education Bureau announced another day of class suspension since the storm has caused varying degrees of impact on schools. Authorities added that on top of the need for schools to clean up their facilities and premises, public transport has not yet been fully resumed. The education chief, however, stressed that doors will be opened for those in need.
We have asked schools to remain open for the parents who may not be able to find someone to look after their kids at home. So that practice will facilitate those parents who need to go back to work, for example, so that their kids will not be left unattended too.
Residents of Hang Fa Tsuen, the housing estate battered by severe Typhoon Mangkhut, are now facing a messy situation. We get details now from Pinky Wong.
Mangkhut has left Hang Fa Tsuen in a mess. Styrofoam-covered roads, fallen trees are everywhere. Playground has become a water park. The underground car park, more like an underwater parking lot. Workers were deployed to pump water out of the site. Even though this car owner had parked his new vehicle on the ground level, the water level was up to the car's engine. Power failure means lifter not working. Workers are busy removing shattered glass and flood water from the estate lobby. While an electricity supplier tried to restore power, residents were still left without water in their units. This resident, who'd been left without water or power since last night, headed to a nearby mall to freshen up. But the taps there were also dry. What's left behind from the monster storm are traces of destruction. Besides the residents, it was also hectic cleaning for restaurant staff. Owners are uncertain when they can get back to business. Hang Fa Tsuen residents hope that apart from an early restoration of electricity and water supply systems, debris could be cleared as soon as possible. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Some 900 flights resumed today after Typhoon Mangkhut. According to the airport authority, both runways will remain open overnight to serve travellers affected by the storm. That story from Kana Chu.
Welcome to our lounge. Enjoy your stay.
Thanks very much.
Find calm in over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. It's another way we've got your back. The Platinum Card from American Express. Don't live life without it.
There is renewed hope for this lady to finally leave after she'd been trapped for days at the airport.
We arrived here September 15, but our flight supposed to be September 16, but it was cancelled. Hopefully we could leave tonight.
JAXO chairman of the airport authority announced that roughly 2,000 flights have been arranged over 48 hours. Up to 900 flights will be dealt with today and normal operations should resume soon. But the authority did remind travelers to make use of public transport due to road traffic. This man needed an hour more than usual to get to the airport as highways were blocked by collapsed trees. This lady who reached the airport by taxi also said the vehicle had to make detours around obstacles. While the typhoon caused water leakage at the airport at one point, the airport authority said 2 runways were unaffected. Kana Chu, TVB News.
Our tropical cyclone signals were cancelled in Hong Kong and Macau earlier today. In Macau, schools were suspended as most areas are still suffering from power failure. Civil servants got a day off today, except those in the Civil Protection Unit. Authorities started to clear up the garbage and objects left in Mangkut's path. Low-lying areas were still feeling the pinch from heavy rain. But on a more positive note, ferry services between Macau and Hong Kong resumed. Casinos also reopened this morning after a 33-hour shutdown.
Well, the Philippines felt Mangkhut at its worst. The death toll in the country is now more than 60, with dozens more still missing. And Mangkhut's path of destruction is spreading and now includes the Chinese mainland. Peter Caveas has that story.
Mangkhut cut a deadly path through the northern part of Luzon, the largest and most populous island of the Philippines. Heavy rain triggered mudslides. An old mining bunkhouse in the village of Idogon was no match for Mother Nature. It was destroyed when the mountainside collapsed. More than 30 people died, mostly miners, and about 36 people are still missing. Crews worked feverishly to get to anyone trapped inside.
Hopes that they're to be fine.
This relative is hopeful that people survived, but realized it's more likely only bodies will be discovered.
Because this is a mass fatality involving probably more than 70 casualties. So our task is to establish identity ng mga victims because some of the victims ng mass fatalities are already decomposed.
More than 200,000 people are in shelters in the heaviest hit areas of the Philippines. Cleanup efforts are also underway in southern China. Mangkhut pummeled Guangdong and Guangxi with torrential rain. Heavy winds felled trees and tore roofs off buildings. Close to 2.5 million people had to flee their homes. This man says he's not afraid anymore because he's safe inside. Mangkhut is now heading further inland on the Chinese mainland. It is now weakened and is classified as a tropical storm, but has provided plenty of destruction in its wake. Peter Caveos, TVB News.
Warm welcome back to TVB News. London Mayor Sadiq Khan has called for another referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union. He says the UK government's handling of Brexit negotiations has become mired in confusion and deadlock and was leading the country down a damaging path.
We've now reached a position where there are 2 outcomes as a consequence of the government's negotiations. A bad deal, and by that I include us leaving the EU without knowing the terms of the future relationship, sort of blindfold Brexit, or no deal. And independent research undertaken for us shows that no deal would lead to 500,000 fewer jobs, 87,000 fewer jobs in London alone, and £50 billion less investment in our country.
British police closed roads and called a hazardous response team after 2 people became ill in Salisbury, the same city where former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter were poisoned. One of the 2 people who got sick is Russian. Police say there's nothing to suggest the incident involved the nerve agent Novichok, which was used on the Skripals. Authorities later described it as a medical incident and lifted the alert.
US media reports suggest the Trump administration is poised to move forward with the next round of tariffs on Chinese goods. These would apply to about $200 billion of stuff, but it's unclear when these would take effect. More signs of worsening trade relations between the world's 2 largest economies. According to the Wall Street Journal, China may pull out of a new round of trade talks proposed by the United States if the Trump administration goes ahead with its threat to impose additional tariffs on imported Chinese goods. According to the report, one senior Chinese official said Beijing is not prepared to enter any new talks with a gun pointed to its head. The White House could make a decision on whether or not to impose some $200 billion of extra duties as soon as late today or tomorrow. Officials are reportedly still working on a final list of products. US Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin had proposed fresh trade talks to begin on September the 20th. With China scrambling to counter US trade moves against it, one former Chinese banking and IMF official sought to portray the Trump administration as irresponsible.
The Trump administration is more and more damaging the global trade system, right? WTO reforms, right? I mean, the whole trade principles, all those things, which is quite a big issue for the whole world, not only for China, because trade has been drive force for global economic growth, for globalization, and also for global, alleviation of poverty.
Another prominent Chinese financier, Luo Jiwei, suggested Beijing should disrupt the supply chains of American companies that rely on low-cost goods or components from China's manufacturing industries. Chinese authorities have yet to confirm what steps aside from retaliatory tariffs they might take, but they have threatened to take comprehensive measures if the US goes ahead with its next round of tariff hikes.
In Australia, sewing needles have been found inside strawberries at supermarkets across the country. They've turned up inside the popular fruit in all 6 Australian states. No injuries have been reported. Some growers have now turned to metal detectors in an attempt to calm public fears, while the government has launched an investigation. The Australian Health Minister took to the airwaves to assure citizens that catching the culprit and keeping consumers safe is a priority. The scare has spread to New Zealand, where Australian strawberries were taken off store shelves. And that's the news.
Thanks for watching.